All right, what's going on, guys? My name is Josh Corporal. Welcome to another episode of Firebuilders Live. We are streaming live from Key West, Florida, and today I have very special guest Christos Skuta on the show. Welcome to Firebuilders Live.
Thanks, Josh. Love the energy. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you, man. Seriously, before we get into talking about management, talking about leadership, everything that you do, if you're listening for the first time, what we do here on Firebuilders Live is we bring on experts and we take these big goals, these big concepts, we break them down into small steps, things that you can do every day consistently to improve, right? Because consistency is key. And today we are talking in that respect about management, about leadership, how to become a better leader, because we all in some way, shape, or form want to walk the walk, essentially, and not just manage, quote unquote, but be a good leader for people, to lead by example. Christo, I can't think of a better person to talk to about this. You've been a professional coach, an executive coach. You've taught MBA students. You teach actually MBA students at MIT. You've been helping Fortune 500 companies, executives, small businesses, pro athletes perform at their peak in some way, shape, or form. And to be honest, you have the best description of success that I know of, which is you just want to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with your wife every single day, which I think is an incredible thing to live up to. And now, you're helping 30 to 45-year-old leaders step up their game and become better leaders instead of better managers. That is part of your mission, and that is what we are going to be talking about today. So again, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. I'm humbled by your intro. I appreciate that. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, so the way that I like to start, and of course, I hope that you guys don't hear they're like doing all kinds of work. I mean, of course, that happens on a live show. That's the fun of it. So the way I like to start this is, where are you in the world right now? And what is a typical day, Christo's life these days, post-COVID or during lockdown?
Yeah, so I'm originally from South Africa, but I'm based here in Philadelphia, actually for the last 18 years. So I've been here for a while. And typical day, yeah, like you said, I mean, I'm an executive coach. I love working with leaders, and especially with COVID right now, I mean, things have exploded. Just been really busy. We actually created a very quick online program to help more leaders during this time. So it's been really, really busy. Just one-on-one coaching and then also some online stuff.
Are you finding that that the reason that it's blowing up is because leadership is more necessary than ever? There's such an unknown out there. No one really knows what to do, and so people that recognize that, these executives that recognize that, realize that this is their time to step up.
Yeah, Josh, there's a massive shift that is happening. This is something, I've been saying this for a while. It's fascinating if you look at here in the US, statistics are showing that by the year 2025, which is around the corner, 75% of the US workforce is going to be 40 years and younger. Every day, 10,000 baby boomers are retiring. You're going to say, well, why is that important? Well, if you're going to talk to the millennials and you ask them what's really important to them, they'll say three things, okay? Well, two really big things. Well, the first thing is they're going to say, I want to be part of a company that's part of a bigger mission. So leaders need to know what their why is and what's driving them and making a bigger impact in the world. And the second thing they'll say is, I want to be led by a leader that truly cares about me. You see, the way leaders led in the 80s and 90s is not going to work moving forward. The world is changing. Now, then you throw COVID on top of that, it just accelerated everything. I believe we're kind of at this tipping point where it's going to become more and more important to be a centered leader that's clear about who he and she is about, what they stand for, what their why is, what their core values are, and learning to connect with people. Most people communicate, Some leaders truly connect. That's the care piece. If leaders can truly do those two things, I think in the next stage we're moving in, it's going to separate them from the rest.
Well, how do you define connection? Like for you personally, when you say it's important to connect, not just to communicate, how do you draw that line between the two?
Yeah. So if you want me to, I can break connection down just kind of and how I understand it.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Make it easier for the listeners. Okay, so I'm a big believer of, I want you to imagine a spider web. So say we have 4 domains, and if you connect the numbers, you get a web. And the bigger your web is, the more capacity you have to handle whatever you're coming your way. So I'm gonna give you 4 domains that I think are important in connection. And I usually help my clients to identify on a scale from 0 to 10 on those 4 domains where they are. And obviously, if all 4 are really high, the bigger the web is. The bigger the web, the better you're going to connect. Okay,
got it.
So that's the visual. But the 4 domains, if I have to really break it down, so the 4 domains, the first one, I'll just quickly run through it. And if we want to go deeper, we can go deeper. The first one is mindset. Okay, that's the first domain. And what I mean by mindset, everything starts with mindset. The reality is, as human beings, not just leaders, as human beings, we are most interested in ourselves. Okay, if we're insecure, we're going to look for ways to feel secure. Doesn't matter what it is. It's really about us. Okay, if you really can get to a place where you deeply believe that your success and the people's success around you is dependent on them, it's not about you, it's about them. It's about understanding them, caring about them. Everything shifts. Now, this sounds very simple. It's like, well, Christy, yeah, okay, mindset. But trust me, you cannot connect with others. Connection is not possible if it's about you. So there's a very big underlying thing. I usually talk about the 3 circles. Actually, I got it from Atomic Habits. I forgot the guy's name. But he talks about 3 circles. The outer circle is outcomes. Processes is the second circle. And then identity. So you can have the outcome of, I want to be a better connector. You can create all the processes in the world and follow the domains and follow the steps. But if your identity does not shift, there's not going to be any change.
And by that identity, you mean your own mindset about this whole thing.
The way I look at myself, the way I look at the world, where do I fit?
Yeah.
So everything starts here. So that's the first domain, is mindset. Do you really believe, do you want to be that leader that care about other people?
Right, yeah. And makes it about them and makes the success like the ultimate goal that everybody is there to achieve more about them and the people that are helping to achieve that goal, as opposed to I don't know, trying to make some CEO richer. Which is. And by the way, I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned this before, when you said that the leadership styles in the 80s and 90s are different than what you're seeing today, is it because of that mindset? I mean, how do you see the difference?
It's a very big part of that mindset. I think profit, systems, structure, profit was just so big. That's just the language that everybody spoke. I think that language, profit's always important, don't take me wrong, but the language is shifting more towards people. So there's definitely a shift there. And, in the past, you listen to somebody, you don't ask too many questions. That's the way it is. There's definitely a change.
Yep. Understood. Okay. So if the very first thing is mindset, what's the second domain?
So the second domain is awareness. Okay. Now let me explain awareness. Awareness is, do you really know your people around you? Are you aware of what their needs truly are? Okay. And I have this great story of a woman that once got an interview with, I forgot his name. Wow, investor, big Buffett, Warren Buffett. Okay, and that was the good news. She got this interview. The bad news was he was like, "Listen, I got 10 minutes." Okay, so she decided she's going to fly to his house, interview him there. But she did all kinds of research, and she found out that he loves cherry Coke. Okay, and so before the interview, so that's the awareness. Before the interview started, she said, "Mr. Buffett, I know that you love your cherry Coke." So I decided, and she pops open a cherry Coke, and I wanted us interview just start on a high for you. And she gives it to him, and he looks at the cherry Coke, and he looks at her and said, "Miss, nobody has ever given me a cherry Coke in the beginning of my interview. You take as long as you need." So that 10 minutes became an hour and a half interview. Okay. But it's that awareness of the people. And I ask my clients usually the question is like, what's most important? What matters most to Josh right now? Josh might be at a place where his health is really important to him. Okay, he had a health scare. Josh might be at a place where family is going through a difficult time. So family really matters. Josh might be at a place where, you know what, he's not married. He wants to work a lot and he wants to get experience. Do you know what truly matters to your people right now? Are you deeply aware of their needs and what matters to them and what's important to them? So that's the second domain, is knowing and being aware, having that awareness of the people around you.
Well, so that brings up an interesting question, because I feel like in the traditional, like stereotypical leader anyway, to achieve that awareness, they'll come to you just like an office space with a cup of coffee, and they'll stand by your cubicle and they'll be like, "Yeah, so how was your weekend?" and just start drinking. And that's not a great way to figure out, you know, that awareness, to create that awareness. So how would you suggest the best way to start to achieve that awareness?
Yeah. So if it's okay, let me continue with the next domains, and then we'll come back to this and see if the next domain is not going to answer that. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Yeah. So we got mindset, we got awareness. The next one's really important, is environment. Okay. Right now, you are picking up three things. You're picking up kind of this, you know, I call it the mental, which is really you picking up how quickly I'm speaking, how low, how slow. This is all subconsciously happening in your mind. You also pick up the emotion that I'm speaking with. That's a third thing. And a second thing. And then the third thing is you pick up my body language. Okay? So if I was standing here, so here's the thing. So you are subconsciously in your mind constantly trying to figure out if you can trust me. If the mental, the emotional, and the physical is not in coherence, you're not going to trust me. So if I say, "Josh, I am really excited to be here," you're not gonna trust me. Okay, because when it comes to environment, you either create an open, trustworthy environment, or you create a very closed, distrustful environment. It's one of the two. Mm-hmm. And we all have worked for a leader or a boss that you just, the conversations are tactical all the time. It's like, you know, like you said, they maybe come with a cup of coffee there and they just talk, but you know they don't truly care. I mean, they're on their phone, or, you know, they're not focused. They're not asking about your family. You just know, because you know they don't really care. And what happens is, if they create a closed environment, you close down. You tell yourself, "Well, I'm not going to go down there again. I'm not going to share anything again." You just close.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you're dead to me. Like, this isn't happening.
Exactly. And leaders don't understand, because our bodies never lie. Our body language never lie. I have leaders all the time with crossing their arms. I'm like, dude, you realize what message you're sending without a word, speaking a word. They're like, "Well, I'm cold." It's like, no, you're not cold. Your body never lies.
Yeah.
You're going to come across a certain way based on how you feel inside. So as leaders, we need to become aware of what's the environment that we're creating around us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And let me put something up really quick just to show you. Right, Sterling said, let's see, I totally agree about awareness. I believe that some people are blessed with this consciousness, but learning how to be aware and putting oneself in others' shoes, it's not easy for someone to learn. I find it to be a natural ability.
It is. It really is. And if I can go further, that I think it is a natural ability. I think it's more natural for certain people. And, not a but, and I've seen this many times. I've worked with many leaders, very high-level leaders, by shifting the mindset, by shifting the identity, and for them to actually start believing that the way they want to lead is more like a servant leader than being the command control leader. It happens. But it's a muscle you need to grow. So I believe you can grow that muscle.
Just takes practice and almost trusting your gut a little bit and trying stuff out and being a little bit more open and seeing what works and what doesn't in the moment.
Yeah, you have to experiment. And that's what I usually tell my clients is you need to be okay with small experiments. This is going to feel way out of your comfort zone, but you have to experiment with something, see what happens. And over time, it's that whole pain and pleasure thing. The reason why we don't change is because the pain is bigger than the pleasure. Getting up 5 o'clock in the morning is a lot of pain to go and exercise. But if you start getting results with the exercise, the pleasure becomes bigger, and then the shift happens.
Yeah. It's like it just kind of does something like this, Yeah. And one interesting question too that Perrion said is, how do you push the domain leading idea down the chain of management? So I feel like this is a much larger topic as well, but just in general, the people if you are acting this way at the top, right? Do you try to, how do you trickle that down?
Yeah, no, it's, first of all, it all starts with you. It all starts with you as a leader. It all starts, because here's the thing, people need to feel it. Okay, people are going to really feel like you want to connect with them. It is very hard. This is not something, because it started with mindset and identity. You don't really have much control over that. Although I can say this, what I found is if people really feel like you deeply care, because here are 3 questions people ask all the time subconsciously. First question is, can I trust you? So, Krista, can I trust you? So, do Krista really care about me? Okay. And can Krista really help me? If you as a leader, for you people that you're leading, can tick the box in all 3 of those, the people that you are leading are going to run through a wall for you. Okay. And we don't talk a lot about, but it's love. It's really what this is. I've been saying this for years. The new currency is caring. Caring is the new currency. As we're stepping into, caring is the new currency. For leaders, you need to understand caring is the new currency. And so understanding that trust, care, and then also, can you help him? But that's more the tactical and technical thing, and that's really important.
And I feel like when most people either create a product or service or become a coach and they end up trying to market themselves in some way, they go straight to that third thing. They're like, hey, here's how I can help you. I can just help you. But they never really ask themselves if they're answering those first 2 questions that you just put there. And so I think that's really great insight, what you just said.
Yeah, and to go back to the question, if people feel like they can trust you, you deeply care about them, you can speak into their life in a much different way. So you have a different type of conversation about them as a human being and as a leader. But a lot of times people as leaders don't have that respect, or the people below them don't really feel that care and that love and trust. So when you speak into their life, it does not have the same effect. So it all starts with you to kind of really truly live that out. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. Okay, so we've got mindset, we have awareness, environment.
Yes. And then the fourth one, that's where people usually go first, is dialogue. Okay. So, but here's the beautiful thing. Again, there's two types: conversation, and the other one is meaningful interactions. And so what I found most of the time what leaders are really good with are tactical conversations. But here's the thing, it's very much one way. Okay? Dialogue is two ways. It goes from me to you, from you to me. Now, don't take me wrong. There is a time to be very tactical. You know, I've worked with, I don't know, almost 50 leaders of the FBI. They brought me in to kind of really help them to shift the culture, because what happened was most of the leaders are very command control, and they realized that the team members became dependent on them. So they stopped thinking for themselves. And like, Christo, we need to change the culture. And as important it is sometimes to be transactional command control, you need to find a way to kind of really get people to create dialogue where it goes back and forth and empower them to think for themselves. Okay, so it's really important in creating dialogue. There's times to be transactional, but create those spaces to ask questions, open-end questions, and shut up, keep quiet, listen, just listen. You know, ask questions starting with a what or a how. Don't start a question with why, because if I say, why did you do it this way, Josh? There's right away emotional reaction. Okay.
Yeah, you feel like you get defensive almost, like you're not actually asking out of curiosity, you're asking out of some type of judgment.
That's exactly it. And you just touch another piece. Use the word curious a lot. I use it all the time. You know, it's like, hey, Josh, I'm curious. Tell me more. So how are things going at home? It's very open-ended. It's curious. The word curious just neutralizes everything. It's amazing. Okay. But create those certain spaces and times where you can have real dialogue. Sometimes it's going to be one way and tactical, but create those dialogue situations. But what I find is if your mindset's the right place, if you're really aware of the people around you and you create the right environment, the dialogue just naturally flows.
You set yourself up for success at that point, right? It's almost effortless because I don't know, there's just like a spring of caring and knowledge that comes out of you if you really are aware and you can care and you do care, and that dialogue just becomes, man, you don't have to think about it so much. It's just there. It just
Absolutely.
exists.
Absolutely.
And so I'm also curious because you mentioned the FBI thing, the first thing that popped into my mind when you said that was, if they have such a commanding, hierarchy, and on one hand, they want people down the line to think for themselves, to empower them to think for themselves. But on the other, they have to follow procedure. Like there has to be a balance between thinking for yourself in such an emotionally volatile experience, like, I don't know, going into a drug bust or getting a wiretap done or something like that. But at the same time, you don't want people to think for themselves because you're, in a way, worried that they're going to make an emotional decision that's not procedural. Yep. I'm curious as to how you ended up like dealing with that balance.
No, absolutely. And maybe I need to separate this. It's just like when I work with athletes, there's a time to practice and there's a time to execute. Okay. And most people don't really understand this. There's practice look very different than actually execute. Okay, so that's important distinction to understand. It's the same with the FBI, that high pressure, the execution, certain things happen a certain way, but there's also kind of the practice, the planning, the kind of organization before that, okay, that happens. with that being said, I mean, the biggest thing that I really helped these leaders with was just to understand that by asking open-end questions, even though you know what the answer is, if you can help them asking questions for them to get to the answer themselves, it's going to take a little more time. So that happens more during the practice time. Before, it's not all the time. So it's finding that percentage of what's really command control, what is really being the coach, and really asking questions to get to the answer themselves. In the long run, what's going to happen is they start thinking more for themselves, and it's just going to become easier for them and for you. So it's a real percentage game. I'm not saying you go way over to the other side.
Yeah.
But for a lot of those leaders, all they knew was this way. It's like when I used to coach tennis many years ago. I was a tennis player, and the coaches around me, the way they were coaching was more consulting. It's like, Josh, put your racket down. No, move your feet, move your feet. And I look at this, I was like, this is not sustainable, because I did the same thing. You will come to me and you say, hey, I want to learn a topspin forehand. And to hit a topspin, this is the ball. You need to start very low with your racket and come up and brush the ball. And I'll teach it to you, but 2 weeks later, you come back to me. So, Krista, can you show me again? And so I was like, this doesn't work. So I was like, you know what? You tell me before you make contact with the ball, is your racket low, medium, or high before you make contact? And what I found most of the time, my clients will say the racket is low, although I can see it's medium or high, but I don't tell them that. And I'll say, okay, the tightness of your wrist on a scale from 0 to 5. 5 is really tight. 0 is really loose. Give me a number. And they're like, I don't know, 3. I'm like, okay, show me a 5. Show me a 0. Show me a 1. Show me 2. Usually after 45 minutes, Josh, my clients were like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize my racket was so high. That was the journey that creates sustainable change so quickly. So there's a time to help people get to the answer themselves. There's a time to be the consultant and tell them.
I love that, because you're right. Most people just shout orders thinking that whatever verbal command that they just gave that person will be interpreted by that person the exact same way. And that usually doesn't happen, like almost at all. The person is trying to execute that, but the underlying thought of what that actually means, not what it is, but what it means, there's a disconnect there. And so by you saying, hey, right, show me a 2, show me a 5, like show me where your racket is. What do you consider high versus low? Like, I think that's awesome. That is, yeah, that's a great way to go about it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, so I normally ask guests that come on this question. We've touched on a lot of stuff, but I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to put this up anyway, right? The first step to becoming a better leader, you said, was mindset, and starting to get yourself in a position where your mindset is clear on what it is that you want. In order to achieve that type of clarity tactfully, what do you suggest that people do to make that happen? Is it like journaling? Is it asking, former friends and, and family members and stuff, what their impressions are? What would you suggest that they do?
Yeah. And then you're specifically talking around connection. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So there are 2 things that I will say. And I don't have mine here on my wall now because we're actually selling the house, so I took it off here. But I have a big thing on my wall that's actually saying it's not about me. I'm looking at it every day. I have it on my phone. I have it a couple places. So that whole thing, I just keep reminding myself it's not about me. Okay. The second thing is you need to look at your why every day. What is your why? Because here's the amazing thing, and I had the privilege of teaching MBA students at MIT around what is your why, and it's an area that I've been still a beginner with it, but I'm curious about it and I want to learn more about it. A why is never about you. A why is about the people around you. It's about something so much bigger than yourself. So just kind of really looking at your own why every day, put it where you can look at it. So those are two really key things. I think if you can do that every day, get in a habit of doing that, that will be really helpful. And then, I'm a big believer of the 5-minute journal as well. It's a more structured way. It's not always, for a lot of high achievers, because I work with high achievers. That's what I specialize in, is work with very high achievers. It's sometimes hard to sit down with a journal and reflect, and some people can do that. But what I found, the 5-minute journal is just a structured way in the morning to think through a couple things, in the evening to think through a couple things, and write for 5 minutes, write a couple things down. And
anything in particular, or is it more like that stream of consciousness, just write for 5 minutes and don't stop?
No, so actually there's something called the 5-minute journal. You can buy it, okay? But I'm trying to remember exactly. Oh, I got it right here. They got questions. So it looks like this. The 5-minute journal. And so every day they have a morning portion and an evening portion. And so the morning is, I'm grateful for, what would make today great, and then daily affirmations, I am. And this is where I constantly repeat that affirmation of, it's not about me. Okay. And then in the evening, 3 amazing things that happened today, and how could I have made today better? But this is a great habit for somebody that, like, I want a journal, but I struggle to do it. And obviously you can create your own questions, but I think just to have that habit is really, really important.
You think that I'm curious, right? Do you think the power in that is the articulation? It's not necessarily the what it is. Like, for instance, what are you grateful for? That you're going to come to some incredible realization, or what would make today great? Great question, right? It's not necessarily that you're going to come up with some idea that you've never had before. It's just the process of articulating it for yourself. Do you agree with that? Like, that's where the strength comes in?
I totally agree with that. I can tell you this as well. So one of the things that's deeply driving me is to work with leaders, younger leaders. So I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with different ages. Usually I would say mostly 40s, 50s, and 60s. But I have this passion for leaders 25 to 45. And the thing that's driving me is to help, especially younger leaders, to make the world a little bit bigger. And the way you make the world a little bigger is to ask the right questions, is to ask more questions, is to go deeper in your core values and your why and things like that. But to learn to ask more questions and be curious. And what's happening is life is not just about you anymore. Life becomes also about the people around you. Your world gets bigger. And by the way, we have a massive need for that, because I think in the United States, that's what's going on. People are so polarized because it's either this or it's that. It's very hard for them to open their world a little bit more and hold different views and opinions at the same time, because it's either this or it's either that. And so I'm on a mission to help leaders to kind of do more of this. And I had a conversation with one yesterday. He's 24. And he told me, he's like, Krista, I cannot believe, he just did my 8-week program. And he's like, I cannot believe, I was talking to my friends the other day, and they're like, because I'm just asking questions. And they're like, what is wrong with you? Why do you ask these questions? Okay, so journaling and sitting with questions is also helping you to do more of that.
And the 5-minute journal, so that's good. I've actually never heard of that before, but I'm going to look it up because I think it's so important. And doing it morning and night, I think, is great. And on that note, as we're talking about the journaling And as we're talking about understanding your why, I'm curious as to what you would say about this. If somebody has never done this before, somebody that's listening right now, never tried this before, wants to try it. If they just did this consistently and I just chose 30 days as an arbitrary number, but let's just say they did it consistently for at least a couple of weeks. In your experience, working with all of these professionals and executives and high achievers, paint a little bit of a picture of where you think they would end up. How would they feel? What would they be able to do a little bit more freely, almost?
Yeah. So the way I will describe it is they're going to feel more centered. Okay. And we have an incredible need for centered leaders. Centered leaders are not insecure. Centered leaders are comfortable in their own skin. Centered leaders are clear about what their core values are and what they stand for. And this is something I need to share too, is it's very hard to create your why if you're not very clear about your core values. Everything starts with your core values. But a centered leader listens, is not always talking. Because it's interesting, we don't talk about uncentered leaders. We don't know how to describe them, but we know the moment we are around one of those uncentered leaders, they are insecure, they're not listening, they jump from one thing to the next. Where a centered leader are clear about what they believe in, what they stand for. There's just this centeredness, there's this consistency. An uncentered leader is not consistent. It's jump from one thing to the next. There's this consistency. So I believe if you start doing some of this deeper work and you're consistently building those muscles, you're going to feel much more centered. You're going to feel much more focused. And you're also going to feel like you have more to give. Now, I have to say this too. Sorry. Yeah.
No, go for it. Go.
I want to say this too. I always talk about the piece that comes before this is what I call capacity building. Okay. And this is what I learned from pro athletes, Olympic athletes, is you need to intentionally have a certain morning routine and evening routine. You intentionally need to manage your energy during the day. Okay. That is foundational, because we can talk about all this stuff that we're talking about. That's great. But if you don't have the capacity to handle what's coming your way, you're not going to be successful. So capacity building is the foundation of what I call this, what we're talking about is code, is your code. You know, so I talk about the 3 C's: capacity building, code, and connection. I believe those are the 3 most important things right now for leaders. If you got those 3 things and you build muscles on those 3 things, you're going to be more successful.
When you say capacity, are you talking about like physical capacity, like the energy to handle whatever happens during the day? Or is it more mental capacity, like allowing yourself not to be so quick to judge? Or is it maybe a little bit of both? What do you think?
So this is something I'm writing a book on right now. This is something I've been studying for many years, working with various athletes, because I was a competitive tennis player myself. I was about to turn pro, did not turn pro. I sat with the question, well, what was it that I was missing to get to that next level? You know, what's the difference? And so I've been studying this for years. And I came to this conclusion, okay? And not a lot of people out there are talking about this. And it's capacity building. And so let me explain this a little bit more. I found there's 5 domains of peak performance. You get the mental, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, and the technical domains. As a tennis player, there's technical things you need to do right. Things you need to do right. But if you want to go to the next level, and that's my company's called The Game Within, that's the mental, emotional, and spiritual domains. Okay, if you shift those, just your performance just goes to another level. But what I found is in those 5 domains, what's challenging about them is they change all the time. How I now feel mentally is very different later. The other thing is they're all connected. Now, this is where the power is that I'm teaching here, right? Or I'm sharing here right now, okay? because I'm still learning. I'm not the expert of this, okay? But this is where I look at, I call this the web. It's kind of the spider web. You got 5 domains. If you at 8 on all of them, your web is going to be really big. The bigger your web, the more capacity you have to handle what's coming your way. So let me quickly run through them. I mean, this is a book, okay? But I'll quickly run. So the technical domain is usually the easiest. People are like, okay, technical domain, think at work as a leader, technically, people are usually 9 or 10, they're pretty high. I'm like, okay, let's look at the mental. Now, the mental domain, if I can summarize it briefly, is the clarity of your mind and your thoughts. On a scale from 0 to 10 right now, where 10 is like, I'm totally clear. It's this clarity, okay? Just give a number there. The emotional, a big part, and I know people don't like it when I oversimplify this, but you're either going to have a positive emotion or you're going to be a negative. And on a negative, there's all kinds of emotions, but you spiral down. Positive is I call it a big space. You're at a big space. You're standing in a mountain. You're feeling free. Small spaces, you're in a small little space. Your muscles are tight. So on a scale from 0 to 10. And the spiritual is around your purpose. It's your ability to sit on the mountain and look down. Or it can be more than that, It's spiritually, my belief in God and how I see purpose and what I'm doing. But it's that ability to see the bigger picture and feel grounded and feel connected and feel centered. And then the physical domain is exercise, sleep, and diet. Okay, sleep is a huge one, by the way, but you give yourself 3 numbers on those 3, and then you take the average number. If you get a number on all of those, you're going to see how big your web is. Now, here is an interesting thing I want to share with you. What I've found over the years is if you can just identify what your lowest domain is, you just work on that. Because if you lift your lowest domain up, it affects all the other domains. Djokovic, 2010, he couldn't beat Nadal and Federer. He hit a mental block, and he did some more searching, and he found out that he became more out of breath after playing a set than he did before. So it was in the physical domain. Long story short, he switched to gluten-free diet. Okay? 6 months after he made that switch, he won his first major against him, and he's been unstoppable after that. If you know what your lowest domain is, and if you lift that one up, it affects all the other domains. Okay, Tiger Woods is a great example. Best golfer in the world. Oh, you got me going here now. Best golfer in the world. Okay,
keep it up, man. I love it.
Books are written about this guy. Okay. Now, with his whole escapade in 2009, basically his mental, emotional, and spiritual domains crashed. He was only dependent on his physical and technical domains, and he struggled with them too. He changed his swing. He had back surgeries, all kinds of surgeries. His web was tiny. He didn't have the capacity. And I believe his ego has been standing in the way to kind of really rebuild. I mean, slowly but surely he's been rebuilding. But that's what I mean by capacity building. And you need to intentionally, because pro athletes intentionally build their web. That's why they have pre-shot routines, by the way, is to make your web bigger. That's why you have a morning routine, to make your web bigger. That's why you have an evening routine, is to make your web bigger. So you're consistently during your day growing your web by focusing on your lowest domains and have very specific routines.
Dude, I've never heard it put this way before, as far as the web and the domains and how it's broken down. I think it's awesome. It makes so much sense. And this is, I want to say, for those, you mentioned that this is going to be a new book that you're putting out, right? And so I'm actually going to say, if people want to get in touch with you, if people want to find out a little bit more about this, everybody that's listening, you got this book going on. What else do you have going on in your life right now?
Yeah, I mean, the most exciting thing that's in my life right now, well, the most important thing in my life is my wife and our 14-year-old son. We've been trying for 15 years, and God gave us a son 14 months ago. His name is Blaze.
That's amazing. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, he's an incredible blessing. But But other than that, when the pandemic hit 3 months ago, so my phone was ringing all the time, just with leaders, just trying to figure out what to do. And I really felt, I have a group coaching program called Elevate, and I reached out to my Elevate guys and I said, listen, do you want to be part of something big to make a difference? And so we create a program, how to lead in these difficult times at work and at home, for free. And within 3 days, 70 leaders sign up over 7 countries, from 7 countries. And my Elevate guys actually were small group leaders in this whole experience. And so 2 weeks after that, we created a new program for 8 weeks. It's called Lead to Succeed. We just ended it, and we're actually starting a new one very soon. And I tell you, it's one of the most transformational things I've ever done. It's just getting leaders from all over the world together and helping them doing this. And we're actually going through capacity building, code, and connection, those 3 things. And so that's the one thing. And then obviously Elevate is a 6-month program where we used to go to the Dominican Republic for 5 days. Now we go to the Poconos here in Pennsylvania. Nice. And it's a 6-month virtual program, but that's something I'm really, really passionate about.
Well, I can tell, I mean, just by the way that you're talking about it, especially with the leadership where we bring everybody from all these different countries in, I imagine that's incredibly fulfilling. Yeah.
Oh, incredible. It's incredible. It's life-changing. I mean, this program, it's called Lead to Succeed. At the moment, we haven't got the domain yet. I think the domain is Leader Elevate. I can share with / join the movement. It's not a great domain yet because we're just creating it as we go. But people can also go to thegamewithin.com if they want to, just get in contact with me or set up a chat.
Yeah, completely. In fact, that's The Game Within is the URL that we shared in the description of this video. So you can just click that, and then we'll make sure to put the other URL into the comments. So that people can check that out too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Christo, seriously, man, this was one of the best episodes. I have to say, you really dropped some amazing knowledge on people today, myself included. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, you're welcome, man. I know I kind of dropped a bomb here. I mean, I'm so passionate about this stuff. If you start opening up a little bit, it just comes out.
No, I love it, and that's what I feel like people need to hear, like this kind of stuff. There's so much noise out there in the world about how to be a good leader and how to, what people should and shouldn't do, and it's unfounded. There's just so much out there. But when you work with somebody like yourself who has experience in all these different fields, have done it themselves, was a professional, well, almost professional athlete, but still knows exactly what it takes mentally, physically, technically, right, to make all of that stuff happen. It's just refreshing to listen to you talk about this kind of stuff. So honestly, man, this was a great conversation.
Thanks, man. I really enjoyed it too.
Well, okay. Yeah. And so I wish you the best of luck. Christo, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for listening. If you have any questions, further comments, things like that, I urge you to get in touch with Christo. And this is Josh signing off another episode of Firebuilders Live. Christo, thanks again.
Thanks, man. Well done, Josh.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And we'll see you guys later. All right. Adios.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.